République française et vive la France!
C'est un pays des droits de l'homme, mais quand il s'agit des musulmans, les musulmans, ils n'ont aucun, d'après ce que je vois, ils n'ont aucun droit.
Their parents came to give them a better life, and at the end of the day, it's not the case. It's a lie, and that's why people are so angry against it.
Islam, they say Islam is violent, that Muslims oppress their women. They are terrorists. They are a threat to Western culture. That is the narrative right now going on in most Western media, actually. And France, as you see, was ahead of the game. It had a lot of terrorist attacks that terrorized the country and terrorized Europe, and I would say terrorized the world. With you are here two Muslim women. We have done many things in our lives. I founded Women for Women International. I wrote books. I hosted my TV shows. But today I am here as a Muslim woman. I'm Zainab Salbi, and with me is Samia Hathroubi, another Muslim woman born and raised in France. I'm born and raised in Iraq. Was a teacher in the suburbs of Paris, known as the ghettos of Paris, that actually a lot of the terrorists are coming from, and now is the director of Foundation for Ethnic Understanding in Europe. So let us start. I promise you one thing in here. We're going to take these issues head on, unapologetic about it. So Samia, let's just start with hijab, the headscarf. A lot of people now believe that Muslim women equates the headscarf, and yet you have two Muslim women not wearing headscarves. So are we unique? Are we different? Are we the exception to our communities and our societies? Why are you not wearing headscarf?
So I was born and raised in France, in a little city in southeast, and I have six sisters. I'm number 7, and I have 2 brothers. We're not only women, but my mother is the only one wearing hijab at home. We were all born and raised without hijab, and I can tell you, without beating about the bush, we're not the exception. We are the great majority of Muslim women today in France are not wearing hijab. So I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm just a French Muslim woman.
But beyond that, and this is just, I mean, from my, Samia is born and raised in France. I'm born and raised in Iraq. I'm an immigrant in this country. Hijab or no hijab, the same families. Like your mother, my cousins wear hijab. It's not a big deal. It has never defined us as being good Muslims or bad Muslims, as being Muslims or not Muslims.
So I'm 32, and for years I was described, and I also described myself first and foremost as French, as an Arab, as a daughter of immigrants coming from Tunisia. But since few years, I will say 7 years, people tend to describe me as a Muslim woman, and I do define myself as a Muslim woman. And it was important for me at a certain point to identify myself as a Muslim woman, also for people to understand and to acknowledge the great diversity within the Muslim community in France, but across the world. I mean, there's no one way to be a woman, but there's no only one way to be a Muslim woman.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So now let's talk terrorism, because a lot of the terrorists are going and shooting and saying Allahu Akbar, which means God is great, in the name of Islam, and that's what people see, that they are doing this in the name of Islam. And I recently went to Paris to try to understand why so many French youth are joining ISIS and being radicalized. And I actually happened to meet the mother and the sister of one of the terrorists who attacked in the stadium and killed 130 French people in November 2015. Let's take a look of how the conversation started. Can we see what they said?
People don't wake up in the morning one day deciding, okay, now I'm going to be bad and I'm going to do bad things. That kind of stuff doesn't happen with no reasons.
So then I tried to understand the reason. To be very honest, I have my own prejudice, of course, of terrorists. And I expected that I will enter a family wearing all black and they're going to hate me. I shave my head, I'm a feminist, all of these things. And I did not see that family. I saw a normal family, and actually a family that is no different than mine. It's a loving family.
Yeah.
So then I thought, it's religion. They must be a religious family, a religious conservative family. There must be, you know, something, they're conservative. And I asked them this question. Let's take a look.
You practice Islam, I think, as most Muslim people practice Islam.
At the beginning, not at all.
At the beginning, not at all.
Not really religious education, just Ramadan, that's it.
You celebrate holiday.
Yes, but not as much as Christmas.
There you go. Really?
Yes, of course, yes.
So you celebrated Christmas more than you celebrated Eid?
Yes, because we were just French people.
So Samia,
Yeah.
what are the reasons? What does it take a person who's born and raised in France, who sees themselves as French, celebrated Christmas all their lives, and this man ends up killing 130 French people?
So the first assumption was basically what you thought. They were coming, fed by hatred, fed by radical Islam, raised in really religious family. But what you have to understand is that when we talk about the jihadi, the terrorists, 32% of them do not belong from, they weren't raised as Muslim. They were coming from Christian family, from atheistic family, from agnostic family. So this is the first point. So it's not an issue of Islam.
But converted to Islam to join ISIS.
Exactly. And secondly, whenever you're talking about, this family is one of the cases that I've seen since years. And what we see is that those people were coming from family, believers, non-believers, practicing, you know, they were doing Christmas more than Eid. But what we've seen that we do know that they all come, all those kids, women and men, all attended public school. And when they attended public school on a daily basis, they were reading this beautiful French motto that I will say for you in French: liberté, égalité, fraternité, freedom, equality, and brotherhood. And in the reality, this motto that I was witnessing also, because I was a teacher, never applied to them.
How so? How so?
Because
I mean, you have one of your students joined ISIS.
I was a teacher for years. I decided not to be a PhD student and to go to those places in 2005, the beginning of the riots. Because what I've seen was a completely rupture in my activism. So I was taking public transportation every morning and every afternoon. And my kids were in the bus with me, so we were pretty much close, and I wasn't that young, wasn't that old at that time. And whenever there was policemen, they were stopped and searched. And it was systematic. They were facing structural racism. I grew up in a very, let's put it in this way, very white, privileged area. But when I went to the suburbs, I have witnessed ghetto ethnically, religiously, and socially, and they're facing racism, structural racism, unemployment. I mean, in some places where I was teaching, 40% of a generation were unemployed when the national rate was 8%. No matter how they tried, at some times they were just ostracized by the society.
For their skin color and for the name of their names and their religion.
My brother was born and raised in France. His name is Chokri. And when he decided to have a work, he couldn't. So he had to leave to UK to find a job. And this is what is happening on a daily basis.
And so one of the things that I discovered when I was there also, that a lot of Muslims in France are afraid to say, I do not eat pork, are afraid to say, I do not drink alcohol, if they choose not to eat alcohol or drink alcohol. How does that feel? I mean, do you feel that discrimination, that there is a fear that people identify you as a Muslim?
You know, I have many brothers and sisters, as I told you, and I have two nieces, Hannah and Rihanna, and they don't eat pork, and they don't eat halal meat. And my sister was just saying to the teacher, please, whenever you can, just give vegetables. They will eat meat at home, but whatever she was saying, they were forcing the kids to eat meat and defining Marine Le Pen succeeded defining the French values as eating pork, drinking alcohol, being white and being Christian, and being completely people of not color do not belong to this French values. So no matter how hard you try, you're not part of us. They created a sense of us and them.
So, ghettoization of mostly Muslim population, bad public education, discrimination. Some of the people I interviewed, and to see the whole interview, it's called the Zainab Salbi project. You people in HR, they say, we do not want to hire Muslims or blacks or whatever. So there is a very systematic discrimination, but there's another story. And the story, and this is an emotional story for all Muslims, this is beyond French. This is a French crisis, and this is what I discovered, is people were saying this is a social issue, economic issue, political issue, and that French politicians are ghettoizing the issue by calling it Islam, but it's actually an existential issue that has roots in economy. But there is an emotional issue, and that goes to the war in Iraq. So I went to Iraq, where I was born and raised. And this is what I saw. Can we take a look? Now, a lot of what you're seeing here, you have probably seen on TV a lot. But this area I grew up in. There were clubs, there were schools, there were homes, there was, I went to parties in this area. I am not like this because I live in America. I was like this when I came to America. And so, when I see this, and in my case, my family happened to know Saddam Hussein, so this was places where we go to parties in his palaces, ate delicious food, wear our own Christian Dior and all of these fancy dresses and jewelry, and this is where the country is left in. And that does make people angry. It makes me angry. Beyond sad, it makes me angry. So when we talk about the violence in countries like Iraq, devoid of the context of that destruction, it dehumanizes people. Imagine Los Angeles like this. Imagine you see Los Angeles destroyed and leveled, and every memory you have in the city is leveled. This is how people are feeling. So how is that connected to terrorism?
So let me give you a short example. So I told you I was a teacher, and one of my kids happened to die in Syria. So he went for jihad and joined ISIS just a few months before the attack in November. And I was already an activist, but I was completely taken aback by what was happening. And I wondered, and I tried to dig and to investigate of what happened to Adama, who was like a very polite, a very nice guy. I really remember him deeply and emotionally. And so I went to his suburbs, I went to see his family, and I went to see his former friends and colleagues. And what I heard from them is that he doesn't belong to a very religious family, but he was looking at TV and looking at those videos online, and he was feeling a sense of injustice. He was looking to have a mission in the world. He was trying to save the world. Basically, this is what my friend told me, that he was trying to save the world in Syria, in Iraq. And this is how the role of recruitment online happens. Because basically, those kids are looking for videos and looking for videos in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq. And then the recruiters say, yeah, no one cares. But I will give you a mission. You will be part of a huge movement. And this is how, step by step, they become radicalized. Most of the young people are radicalized online, and because in the very beginning they were trying to save the world, not because they were trying to harm it.
Interesting. So this is exactly what I found out, is about 92% of the recruitments happen to online, and that ISIS is using that same story, whether it's discrimination and racism, or whether it's the story of the destruction of Iraq and Syria, etc., as a way to recruit, manipulating it for their own purposes. Now, there are other people who are manipulating that fear for their own purposes. Let's go to French politicians, and let's go particularly to Marine Le Pen, who is the head of a right-wing party. Let's take a look at what she's saying.
Vous vous opposez aux provocations vestimentaires d'une minorité extrémiste, vous êtes islamophobe. Si vous rappelez que la laïcité exige des religions un devoir de discrétion et de retenue dans la sphère publique, vous êtes islamophobe.
What do you, I mean, she has a point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's
she's a point.
really
You
good.
cannot criticize,
She's
you
really
cannot
good.
say, and then this is the fear. This is the fear. So how do you respond to her as a Muslim woman that you see a student of yours got joined by ISIS and got killed there, and a family I met did the son did a terrorist attack? How do you respond to her? What is she saying exactly?
So there are 4.5 million of Muslims in France, but most of them live in big cities. So it happens to be that some people live in some small villages and have never really interacted with a Muslim person. And when they look at ISIS, when they look at the terrorist attack that happened in France, they will think that all the Mohammeds and all the Samia and all the veiled women are potential terrorists. So I think that Marine Le Pen is really good because she's the only one talking to those people. And secondly, why I think Marine Le Pen, I mean, there are upcoming elections in May. Even if she wins, I don't think she will win, but anyway, I think she has already won. Let's put it in this way. The process has already started. Her ideas are everywhere and have shaped the society. Just to give you a short example, one of the main topics of the Front National was migrants, immigration. And she was saying that, and most of the people today, 51% of the French society thinks there are too many migrants in France. Second issue is the French values. She has been the one promoting and advocating for French values. French values need to be understood as being white, being Christian, eating pork, and drinking alcohol. So basically, a lot of people are ostracized.
But then, Samia, how does that make you feel? I mean, I know as a Muslim in America, and I am a US citizen, when the Muslim ban happened, I got scared. And I am who I am. You're seeing me. I got scared. I got scared because I was like, so where do I belong? If I am not safe in the country that I took refuge in for safety because my country is fully destroyed, so where am I safe? And where do I belong? And where can I be free? And it shook my core, to be honest. It shook my psyche. How do you feel when Marine Le Pen says things like that and has a popularity in some of the anti-immigrant
In 2002,
rhetoric?
her father, went on the second round, so I marched, like most of my friends. I was scared. I thought that I was crying, yeah, basically. It was my first shock politically. Today I'm smiling, because she has already won. The process has started. They won municipalities.
Does it make you, as a Muslim, does it make other Muslims in France scared?
I think no longer. We do think that now we need to organize, and struggle, but let's face the reality. A lot of people are already within the shape, and I mean, she has won minds and heart of the French citizens.
So now what do we do? It's a grim story. And I actually feel like we are living in the era of fear, blame, all of it. Let me take it back to what the mother of the terrorist said when I asked her. Let's take a look.
What's happening?
Bien sûr, je ressens un vide. Mon fils me manque beaucoup. Je ne peux pas ne pas l'aimer. J'ai demandé pardon à toutes les victimes.
This family is like sort of stuck in this horror. So she's asking for forgiveness. You are doing something about it. What are you doing?
You know, it sounds gloomy. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, sometimes I feel completely down. And I remember one thing that my mother taught me, one quote from Ibn Rushd, Averroes, Muslim scholar from the 12th century, it's really far away, but he said one thing.
But that's when we were proud, actually.
Exactly.
We had lots of scholars then.
He said, ignorance leads to fear, fear leads to hate, hate leads to violence. And gloomy as it is, I keep this in mind and I act. So while I'm here today, but I will be back in Europe very soon, and we created 40 platforms for rabbis, imams, young people to not only engage in dialogue, but also engage in actions to work for social justice. Because those people are not only talking the talk, but they are also walking the walk. And they are just an illustration, example, beautiful example of ordinary people who say that we are not doomed to be enemies, and they are still place for love, and I still place for forgiveness.
And what exactly you're doing? You're having, what is that interfaith
So
dialogue?
the interfaith dialogue is bringing, so training, empowering young people, Muslims, Jews, Christian, believers and non-believers, because in France you have 30% of people who do not believe, and we're bringing them together to interact, to get to know each other, and also to act. So last Sunday I had an example of an action that we did, which was called Tzedaka, bringing 15 kids from the suburbs of Paris and feeding the hungry. They brought the food, they act together, and then they give this food to the homeless in the street of Paris.
Thank you. As for me, thank you. As for me, you know, when I went to France and met the house of the terror, the family of the terrorists, and I was really scared, and I have a lot of prejudice in me. And then I left saying we need to take a leap of faith in this time of fear, that we have really two choices to do. Is we either become the guards of fear itself and maintain it and enlarge it, which is the narrative that is going on right now, or we take a leap of faith and lower our shields and get to see the humanity of the other. And that's the only way I could see a way forward in this critical time. And so, Samia, you and many others give me hope that we get to, when I asked the youth in France, I was like, what can we do? And they said, get to know us, get to know our religion, get to know us, get to know who we are. So we may, in the words of Rumi, out beyond the words of right doings and wrongdoings, there is a field. I shall meet you there. May we meet in the field. Thank you so much.